You know how stressful it is when guidance systems go down. You lose field time. You lose yield potential. You lose patience. Help is here. Raven Cruiser 2 RTK with Slingshot. Precision simplified. Learn more at ravensimple.com.
You know, Brian, foxtails are just terrible in cereal crops, but our wheat of the week's not a foxtail. It's something even worse.
Yeah, there have been some studies that show that wild oats, one wild oats plant, is about equivalent in terms of yield loss to 10 foxtail plants in wheat. That's a major difference. With wild oats, you can't let this get going on your farm, especially if you have a wheat crop. Now, obviously, it's easy to kill in the broadleaf crops. You can control wild oats very easily in sunflowers or soybeans, most any broadleaf crop. When you're talking about grass crops, especially wheat, where we don't have Roundup-resistant wheat today, you can't just go spray Roundup. What are you going to do if you've got a wild oats problem?
Here's the other thing, Brian, is wild oats is starting to, in some areas, become resistant to the products that we've been using for years. Now, I'm talking about the ACCA's products. Things like Axial, Discover, Puma. In most areas, they do a pretty nice job on wild oats, and they also clean up the foxtails. So they've been widely used in spring wheat crops. But when you think about if you get resistance to those, what are your choices?
Well, then you have to go to the ALS family of herbicides, and what we would suggest to you if you've got a major wild oats problem is use a pre-emerge herbicide. And you might say, a pre? I've never used a pre-emerge herbicide in wheat. You know what? There are a lot of things in life you may not have done. We're just trying to help you raise a better crop. But if you've got a lot of wild oats, start with that good pre. You can control a lot of the wild oats before they ever even come out of the ground. Because yes, you can control a lot of wild oats plants, but if they're so thick, you know what? You've already lost a bunch of yield by the time you spray. Why go through that? Our recommendation is to go out with a low rate to prepare, a cut rate, so you don't have to worry about crop injury or anything else. It'll probably only cost you $4 an acre if you use a reduced rate of 0.2 ounces per acre. And then you're in pretty good shape because then you don't have so many wild oats plants, and what you do have left is going to be relatively small.
Well, now post-emerge, if you wanted an ALS type herbicide, you could still use that same chemistry that's in Prepare. It's also in the new Everest 2.0. Now, Everest 2.0 has a crop safener with it, so you don't have the crop injury concerns, but it still has that great ALS herbicide in there that is awesome on wild oats, and it does a good job on the foxtails too.
But the reason too why we want you to use a pre is use that Prepare, that's ALS. Then you could follow post-emerge with an ACCA's product like Axial, and Axial, by the way, is pretty good to tank mix with some other herbicides. Plus, when we start talking about tank mixing, yes, you can put Axial with something else like a Wide Match or a Husky for broadleaf weed control, but when you do that, it's going to reduce the effectiveness of the Axial. That's again why we want you to put that pre down. If you can get 80% of the wild oats or 90% of the wild oats with your pre, so what if your Axial isn't perfect post-emerge? If you've got 100 million wild oats plants out there post-emerge though, I'll just tell you right now, just use Axial by itself or just use Puma or Discover by itself. Don't mix it with a broadleaf herbicide.
Okay, now what about these pre-mixed products like a Wolverine, for example, or like a Gold Sky? How do they work on it? Do you have that same antagonism?
Yeah, you're still going to have antagonism. So again, it's not a big deal if you only have a few wild oats plants, but if you have a lot, use one of the ACCA's or ALS products all by themselves.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's Weed, but there's more Ag PhD to come after this.